Helldivers 2 blowing through sales estimates as servers struggle to meet demand. A single Helldivers 2 dev named Joel is pulling the strings on the galactic war like an all-powerful dungeon master. Helldivers 2 players share videos of new flying bug enemy. Arrowhead boss insists bugs can't fly. Oh no, Helldivers 2 has flying bugs to deal with now. How Helldivers 2's terminids compare to real insects, according to an expert. What? Helldivers 2's relentless bot war has players questioning who the real enemy is. Helldivers 2 players are racing to complete next major order for procreation permits? What is going on with this game? Despite running a channel that covers gaming content, I don't often play very many brand new games. There's plenty of older titles sitting in my backlog that are deserving of attention, and it's pretty rare for a new release to grab me enough to warrant some immediate playtime. And I'm usually pretty at peace with this, though I do occasionally feel just a tinge of regret when I forego playing industry-sweeping instant classics like Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring. Those major releases that immediately captivate throngs of players and often transcend the borders of gaming to become an even more significant cultural experience. Most often though, I can reason with that regret by knowing that I can play these games at any later point and still have largely the same experience that everyone else had when they first played them. But every so often a game comes along that throws reason out the window. And in this case, it takes reason, hands it a military-grade rifle, and drops it out an airship barreling towards an alien invasion that threatens democracy and freedom itself. So after several weeks of constantly reading hilarious headlines, tuning into action-packed streams, and observing the overall feel-good type of success that Helldivers 2 was having, I finally signed up for duty. And after launching and boarding my ship, the Titan of Twilight, I began doing my part in the constant struggle for liberty across the galaxy. Because if the hype was for real, I knew I didn't want to miss out on this moment. Pretty much immediately following the release of Helldivers 2, the game and its whip-smart development studio wasted no time in carving out its own unique space in the current gaming culture. Sales numbers and player counts seem to keep rising and rising against most standard expectations, and despite an extremely crowded space full of other live service games, Helldivers 2 has seemingly crushed the competition without mercy, not unlike annihilating a giant alien bug with an orbital strike or high-powered machine gun. And one of the keys to this success is without a doubt the fresh take that Arrowhead Game Studios has taken with its frenetic co-op shooter. With a constant flow of new content and a brilliant take on narrative structure that guides players while simultaneously allowing them the freedom to craft their own stories, Helldivers 2 has managed to create what is essentially a massive role-playing experiment that stretches from the players to the media to even the CEO and other leadership at Arrowhead. In fact, through its first couple of months, Helldivers 2 was moving and changing at such a dynamic level it was hard not to pay attention. And it was exactly this ability to consistently capture the minds of its ever-growing audience that got me to buy in as well. I didn't want to miss out on this unique moment in gaming, not knowing when the hype and hilarity would ultimately slow down. Of course, most people refer to this as the fear of missing out, or begrudgingly, FOMO. And it got me good. But what is it about this game that makes it so enticing? What has caused this enormous swell of FOMO surrounding this particular version of a galactic war? From what I can tell, there's two main components that have given Helldivers 2 this superpower: an unparalleled buy-in from the community and a dynamic content structure. And both of these elements are crafted to play expertly off one another. As one grows or receives more attention, the other is enhanced and made better for it. These two standout components are then fused together by a gameplay and combat system that makes the triumph of togetherness an accessible and seamless experience. And so far, this finely tuned interaction has proven to be highly successful. So let's take a look at each of these in more detail. Something that becomes immediately apparent upon playing or researching Helldivers 2 for even a short while is just how much its player base has bought into its core premise. When you boot up this game, you aren't just playing a Helldiver, you are a Helldiver, and it's easy to get caught up in the casual role-playing aspect the game provides. From Reddit posts to mid-mission chat messages, from tweets to in-game emotes, it's nearly impossible to escape the immersive aspect that Helldivers players have leaned into. Arrowhead has achieved the rare feat of creating and managing a majority non-toxic online gaming community, one that embraces the journey as much or even more than the results, and the payoff for their efforts here continues to snowball. When you jump into a mission with 3 random strangers, and the first thing you hear is an optimistic voice come through the in-game voice chat saying, "Hello there, brothers," or "checking in to the fight for liberty," it's easy to feel the contagious, positive energy pulse through you. The same effect is felt after finishing a mission, returning to your ship, and embracing each one of your teammates with the brilliant hug emote. The unique piece of this is that it doesn't matter if you're playing with friends or strangers. We're all in this together, and therefore, everyone gets a hug whether I know you or not. Interactions like this occur frequently and organically, and Arrowhead has expertly facilitated this behind the scenes with careful choices to the gameplay structure, the presentation, and the marketing of its viral hit. For example, the company's creative director has stated they have no intention of adding a PvP mode to the game, specifically because it has the potential to cause more toxic behavior between players. Instead, they've built a game around a fantastic PvE component that doesn't just pit players against AI enemies, it creates a galactic battle in which players, together, are the last line of defense against a common enemy threatening Super Earth itself. They've then continued to lean into this narrative full go, consistently promoting the game and each of its frequent content updates as a new chapter in the epic struggle against this ultimate threat to humanity. In doing so, Arrowhead is essentially using a self-aware parody of nationalism, propaganda, and zealotry to create a virtual form of nationalism, propaganda, and zealotry. And it has been just fascinating to watch this unfold. Historically, one of the chief tactics to get large groups of people to buy into a movement, whether that movement is good-natured or nefarious, is to create a sense of belonging. In Helldivers 2, you're not just playing a game fighting alongside other players, you're participating in a battle of good versus evil, and every person plays a vital role in getting the job done. Even when a major order or mission directive seems insurmountable, there's always the feeling that if we focus on it together, we can get this done, even if it's going to require the often hilarious demise of thousands of Helldivers along the way. And this sense of belonging to a greater cause is at the core of the Helldiver experience. All for one, one for all, and, sorry I just blew you up with that grenade. It is possible that the role-playing enthusiasm we've seen around the Helldiver community would have happened on its own, but I think it's almost certain that the clever leadership and social marketing by the game's developers played a large role in laying this foundation. The way the company never breaks character and frames everything as messages and updates to its Helldivers is both commendable and humorous. When an upgrade to your ship is released in-game, it's presented as Helldivers being authorized to requisition level 4 modules. When a new weapon is announced, they tell you to manage the heat like you manage democracy. And even when minor patches are rolled out, they're always accompanied by a self-referential "support incoming" notification. This commitment to the role then bleeds into responses from the player base, which in turn manifests as similar dramatics in-game. It's basically like one big, nerdy, self-fulfilling prophecy, and clearly it does a phenomenal job at both attracting new players and retaining current ones. Because frankly, who wouldn't want to be a part of this type of active, entertaining, and largely positive community? Who could resist fully buying into the concept of being one of the Helldivers gang? Who would want to be absent from that kind of unique gaming experience? You can practically feel the fear of missing out building with each new dive into enemy territory. The second strategy that's helped to cement Helldivers 2 as the most can't-miss experience in gaming right now is the developer's unique take on a live service formula, specifically the way it implements a fluid and constantly changing content structure. And it's a strategy they utilize across the board, from the game's narrative, to its missions, to its updates and content releases. Rather than using a traditional storyline with predetermined scripted events, Helldivers 2 instead implements a loose, ever-in-flux narrative that's dependent on the success or failure of the entire Helldivers community. At any point in Helldivers 2, you can select from a plethora of missions scattered about the galactic map, currently split between battles with both the Terminids and the Automatons. But there are also major orders that serve as overarching goals for the entire player base, and these orders are consistently rotated and swapped out after they're accomplished or the time to complete them runs out. So let's say the current major order is to fully liberate a specific planet in a specific sector. As an individual Helldiver, I can choose to completely ignore this directive and wander off to the opposite side of the galaxy to complete whatever missions I choose. But Helldivers as an entity are incentivized to take part in these orders because of both extrinsic and intrinsic rewards. The extrinsic part of this is that upon finishing a major order, all Helldivers receive their share of medals to spend on new items or cosmetics. And it's typically a quantity of medals that would take a whole lot of time to just earn on your own completing single missions. So if players want to more efficiently earn and unlock as much as possible, the most effective route is to take part in these major orders. And that's great, and it's a cool system for progression, but it's the intrinsic motivation that matters more, because this is what encourages players to keep playing even if there was no guarantee of a quantifiable reward. And that intrinsic motivator goes back to the idea of feeling like you belong to a greater movement. Participating in missions that count towards major orders feel like volunteering your time to a charitable cause. Your individual impact is often hard to see in the grand scheme of things, but you still know that you're a necessary cog in the machine that makes the difference. The inclusion of the planet liberation percentage at the end of missions is both hilarious and effective. Seeing your impact from a successful dive at a fraction of a percentage point is almost just another subtle dig at your role as a disposable number in the sea of countless others fighting the good fight. But here's the secret. Since we've already bought into the movement and our purpose, and we know that there are thousands out there just like us, we still feel like we're contributing to the cause of spreading managed democracy, no matter how small our impact may be. Plus, we're not here to make decisions or strategize about how to win this war, we're here to suit up and dive in. Instead, many of those high-level decisions, allegedly, are controlled by a single real-life developer, Helldivers' much-beloved game master, Joel. Joel is the person at the heart of Helldivers 2's ever-changing and fluid mission structure, controlling factors like where the aliens are going to strike next, which planets we need to liberate, and how those moves affect the game's story beats. Essentially, Joel says jump and we say how high. Not since Overwatch creative director Jeff Kaplan sat in front of a fireplace for 10 hours on stream has a single developer captured the hearts of an entire community quite like Joel has. The extent to which Joel has actual control over what takes place in the game's missions and storyline is not confirmed, but it is regardless a brilliant move on the part of Arrowhead. By providing a real-life person that Helldivers players can prop up and relate to, it creates a true human connection to the game, in turn making the player buy-in to the Helldivers ecosystem even stronger, as it's now based not just on the game experience, but also on an emotional attachment to its development team. The result of Joel's puppeteering is a content flow that is constantly evolving and is a direct result of how the players are playing the game. With the loose narrative he sets in place, individual storylines then emerge for each player or group. No two Helldivers will ever have the same experience, but all are fighting in the same war. It's a truly novel take on storytelling, and it has absolutely enraptured regular players to keep diving. The other ingenious part of this feature is that because Helldivers 2 plays out as a continuous, fluid struggle, there is no beginning and no end. In other words, Arrowhead has discovered a way to constantly provide players with new things to do and new stories to discover without the need to use resources on scripted missions or seasons like we'd normally see in other live service games. There is of course a trade-off here, as this method prevents the developers from delivering carefully curated content or story beats, but it's arguable that the massively cooperative experience that Helldivers shoots for lends itself better to this kind of nebulous narrative anyway. And it has the added benefit of being easier for new players to jump in at any point without feeling like they have to catch up on past content. The lack of a seasonal structure also allows the developers to simply drop new content when they want, how they want, without waiting for some kind of major update or new release. And as is on brand for the Helldivers character that Arrowhead has created, this content sometimes isn't even announced, but rather just introduced in-game for players to come across. So one week you may feel like you've finally got a handle on all the Terminid enemy types when all of a sudden flying bugs start appearing in your missions, giving you and your team a whole new unexpected dimension to deal with. And when all of this works together, the fluidity of the narrative, the dynamic mission orders, the consistent new in-game content, it creates a gaming environment that makes people want to keep being a part of. Because things constantly feel fresh and changing and like a true version of a persistent, massively multiplayer world. Now you couple this with the staggeringly stable player base and committed buy-in from the community, the developers, and the media, and you have something that's evolved into one of those rare moments in gaming that makes people stop and take notice. If you've been paying attention throughout this entire video, I haven't uttered a single thing about how the game actually plays. And while that's fine when simply explaining these concepts of community and content, truthfully it would never work without a system of gameplay features that supports both of those ideas. And that sounds obvious, but this is what ends up being the third ingredient in Helldivers' remarkable ability to get people to want to play this game. What's here is really solidly built and genuinely quite a bit of fun, resulting in combat that feels impactful and entertainingly over the top. When your squad comes across a large group of enemies or an objective that needs destroyed, and every single one of you ends up simultaneously launching some kind of explosive aerial strike on the area, the result is a glorious sequence of fire and chaos that demonstrates you and your teammates' dominance over the battlefield. And the best part of moments like this, and something that we'll see is a consistent theme throughout the Helldivers 2 experience, is that it doesn't matter that this is not the most efficient use of team resources. It gets the job done, and it looks cool doing it. After all, why blow something up once when you can blow it up 4 times? I mean, I would argue that's the democratic way to do things. Missions in Helldivers 2 are varied but accessible, most being intuitive enough that you can usually figure out what to do with them even without a friendly stranger holding your hand along the way. But importantly, most friendly strangers will do just that if you need them to. The stratagem system is implemented well, and the fact that each one is activated through a series of inputs rather than just being mapped to a button or menu adds to the strategy, the intensity, and at its best times, the reliance on teammates to take the heat away from you while you dial up a defensive turret or call down a cache of supplies. Which is a perfect example of why this combat system blends so effortlessly with the game's intended goal of creating an enjoyable, action-packed co-op experience. And after putting a lot of thought into why this works so well, I think I've finally landed on the answer. Of all the pieces that Helldivers 2 mashes together, perhaps its most impressive feat is that it makes Camaraderie frictionless. It's important to establish that the gameplay in Helldivers 2 is enhanced tremendously by working with others, period. You certainly can play the game solo, but it feels like an entirely different, most times more challenging experience. Even adding one other player to your missions makes a world of difference, as it opens up so many more options to play the game the way you want to play it. Of course, the ideal way to do this is by getting together with several friends or co-gamers, getting on voice chat, and making a deliberate effort to coordinate your plans and strategies. But in reality, this is probably only an option for a relatively small percentage of players. Fortunately, Helldivers 2 has your back, and makes playing with strangers as painless as possible. When selecting a mission, you can jump into anyone's open lobby from the map screen and you're transported immediately either to their ship or directly inside one of their hellpods, ready to select your loadout and start your journey together. Once you land on a planet, player markers both on screen and on the map make it easy to see where your teammates are. A simple ping system allows players to mark locations, enemies, or objectives for everyone. Automatic voice lines inform you of important details like when someone is reloading or when they're calling in a stratagem to support you in battle. The extremely open design of levels allows for any kind of movement amongst squad members, from rushing into an encounter at the same time to flanking enemies on 3 different sides. And one of the cool things about this freedom of positioning is that these moments often just seem to miraculously happen on their own. Players will often move from objective to objective on their own path at their own pace. But as soon as you're alerted of an attack or a group of enemies, you'll notice that team members converge on that location from each of their respective angles, almost accidentally creating advantageous positions for the side of the Helldivers. The game simply makes it easy to work together, even when you're not directly communicating how you want to do that. And because this is a game that never takes itself too seriously, from its explosive action all the way to its social media accounts, it creates a gaming environment that really is just focused on having fun, which almost always eliminates toxicity because what's the point? None of this really matters anyway. Throughout my time with Helldivers 2, I never got mad at teammates if we didn't complete an objective, never frustrated if another player was dying more than others, never felt pressured to use any particular loadout or weapon. The chaos found throughout Helldivers missions and frenetic combat sequences is not only part of the fun, it can sometimes oddly serve as a palate cleanser from the moments when you're focused and taking your experience more seriously. In that sense, this feature is almost like a built-in pacing device, allowing more lighthearted moments of respite that are often needed throughout a game built on intense action. Just like a game with a more traditional sequenced story or predetermined set of levels would utilize different environments, gameplay elements, or set pieces to break up its action and keep an engaging pace, Helldivers 2 leverages its uniquely wacky moments to achieve the same thing. Handshakes between two players as an objective blows up in the background, accidentally lighting teammates on fire, getting hit with an explosive and being launched into the side of a rock face, then spending 15 seconds rolling down that rock face before coming to a stop. Moments like this and more all act as an internal pacing mechanism. It's over the top and sometimes trolly and oftentimes comical, and above all else, it doesn't really care if you fail. Because the gameplay in Helldivers not only provides a fantastic setup for teamwork, it also provides ample opportunities for absolute tomfoolery. And it's that open option to have fun the way you want to have fun that helps make this game so appealing. Because the magic of Helldivers, the part that keeps people coming back, the part that people fear of missing out on, that's not what's found in the structure of the game in a traditional sense. It's not groundbreaking combat or intricate level design, it's not a genre-leading amount of polish or refined gameplay systems. It's the feeling of community that's created with a committed, infectiously positive player base. It's the building of a universe that breaks the borders of the game and has seeped into social media, news outlets, and the greater culture of gaming. It's a dynamic narrative that's constantly being bolstered by new content and fresh ideas. And it's especially watching helplessly as your friend, or a complete stranger, hilariously gets ragdolled across the screen from accidental friendly fire, then proudly calling in reinforcements to bring them right back into battle. The magic of Helldivers is being a part of something, and saluting those who bravely continue the fight for democracy, for Super Earth, and for all their brothers and sisters who would do the same for them without a second thought. So if any of you fellow Helldivers ever happen to find yourself aboard the Titan of Twilight in the future, know that there will always be a Hellpod ready for you to launch, and a warm cup of liberty waiting for you upon your return. I couldn't possibly let you miss out on that. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw here, do me a favor and like this video, subscribe if you're really into this stuff, and leave a comment about any particularly wacky, hilarious, or inspiring moment you've had in Helldivers 2 alongside your fellow defenders of freedom. And it's cool if you don't want to do any of those things, as long as you don't mind being remembered as a cowardly bug sympathizer. For even more commentary on game design, you can find me on Patreon, where I post both member exclusive and free content. See you next time.